Thank you for joining us for the RAD Studio 10.2 Tokyo launch webinar. This webinar is presented by the RAD Studio Product Management Team, Serena DuPont, Marco Cantu, and David Millington. If you have any questions after the webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out to us using the email addresses displayed on the screen. Now, to our webinar agenda. In this webinar, we're going to provide an overview of what RAD Studio is all about, key new features in the 10.2 Tokyo release, including our new Delphi Linux server support, IDE and FireMonkey enhancements, C++ enhancements, and more, followed by some great demos from Marco highlighting our new Delphi Linux server support. Now, we're also going to cover what's new for RAD Server, Embarcadero's turnkey application foundation for rapidly building and deploying services-based applications. Now, what is RAD Studio? RAD Studio is our development tools product suite and consists of both Delphi and C++ Builder. With RAD Studio, you can build applications for Windows 10, Mac, mobile, and IoT using either Object Pascal or C++ as the programming language. Now, in the 10.2 release, we've also added new platform support for Linux, enabling Delphi developers to build Linux server applications. Now, with RAD Studio, we provide official platform support for the latest operating systems, and this includes Windows 10, including Windows 10 Anniversary Update, Mac OS, including Mac OS Sierra support, iOS 10, and Android 7 Nougat. We also provide support for several older versions of the operating systems that we support. And new in 10.2 is Delphi Linux server support, allowing you to target both Ubuntu and Red Hat enterprise distributions. Now, RAD Studio provides powerful VCL controls for Windows 10 and also enables FireMonkey development for Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. Now, with RAD Studio 10.2, you can target all the major app stores, and this includes targeting the Windows 10 store with either your existing or new VCL Windows application or FireMonkey Windows application, or targeting the Windows 10 store, Mac OS, and iOS Apple App Stores, and the Google Play Store with your multi-device FireMonkey applications. Now, RAD Studio also provides support for building cloud-based applications. We provide components for connecting to cloud services from Amazon and Microsoft Azure, and we also have a REST client library that's available on all supported platforms that makes it really easy to connect to any type of REST service. And as part of RAD Studio, we also integrate with backend as a service providers such as Kinvey, Parse, and App42 that provide popular services such as push notification support, user authentication support, and cloud-based storage. Now, we also provide support for MongoDB in addition to leading enterprise databases. And we have some great demos included with 10.2 that show you how to get started building cloud-enabled applications. With RAD Studio 10.2, you can also extend existing Windows desktop applications or mobile applications with Internet of Things capabilities. And we provide built-in support for both classic Bluetooth and Bluetooth low-energy devices, as well as Z-Wave devices. Now, as part of that, we provide the ThinkConnect IoT components, and those are dozens of pre-built components that you can use in your applications, and they cover a wide range of devices, including healthcare devices, fitness devices, and home automation devices. Now, we also provide a beacon component that you can use in your application, and with our beacon fence solution that is part of RAD Server, you can track user movement both indoors and outdoors. Also part of our IoT solution is our ThinkPoint Edgeware support, which allows you to locally store, filter, and compute vast amounts of IoT data collected at the edge. And with all the different IoT-related technologies and functionalities that we provide in RAD Studio 10.2, we make it really easy to build an IoT solution. Now, C++ Builder provides C++ 11 language support for both Windows and mobile, and includes an enhanced Clang-based compiler for Windows 32-bit and 64-bit, iOS, and Android. Now, in RAD Studio 10.2, we provide better support for debugging C++ applications. The linker is now large address aware, which means it can take advantage of up to 4 gigabytes of memory. And RAD Studio 10.2 also offers improved heap and resource handling in the linker, and you can up to double compiled code performance with a new optimization level that we've added. And David Millington is going to cover more of the C++ enhancements in RAD Studio 10.2 later during the presentation. Now, Delphi is based on the modern Object Pascal programming language and provides high-performance native compilers for all supported platforms. With Delphi today, we support building applications for Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android, including all the 4 supported app stores from one codebase using FireMonkey, or Windows applications using VCL. Now, new in 10.2, you can use the same programming language that you love to also build server applications for Linux. So now let's get to what's new in RAD Studio 10.2. Now, RAD Studio 10.2 consists of many great new features, including productivity enhancements for the IDE, enhancements to C++ Builder, Windows 10 store support, which we initially introduced in Berlin Update 2, Linux development support for Delphi, FireDAC enhancements, new library features, and RAD Server multi-tenancy support. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic to David Millington, who's going to cover C++ Builder and IDE enhancements in RAD Studio 10.2. David?
There's some great new features in the IDE in 10.2. One of the most visible changes is to do with the View menu. The View menu has been rearranged. You can see here 10.1 Berlin's menu on the left, and it's quite long. Following the example of the Debug Windows submenu, we've moved tool windows, such as the Object Inspector, Structure, Messages, and so forth, to a Tool Windows submenu just below the existing Debug Windows submenu. We've also added a new Editor submenu which contains a number of editor actions and useful features from the Editor context menu. Other items have been moved to keep related items adjacent to each other. The new menu is now much more usable and discoverable, and we've had some very positive feedback about this, and we hope you'll find the menu much easier to use. We have a number of other improvements in the IDE in 10.2. Code Insight and Code Completion for Delphi now correctly handles static and dynamic arrays. We have a number of DPI fixes, such as the Find and Files dialog works on screens with high DPI, and support for designing and opening forms at different DPIs has been improved. The context menus for the Code Editor tabs and files in the Project Manager now have a Show in Explorer menu item which will show the file's location in Explorer. And the project's manifest file now supports several execution levels, as Invoker, Highest Available, and Require Administrator, and also allows the UE access flag to be set. The IDE loading speed should be faster, including in specific network cases, and support for building very large project groups, such as those with over 100 projects, has been improved. We have a number of improvements for debugging as well, including full support for iOS 10 debugging and Delphi's iOS simulator, both those from 10.1 Berlin hotfix, but a number of other improvements for iOS and macOS, such as improvements evaluating virtual functions, improvements handling strings and character arrays, and errors ending the debug session now being completely resolved. I just want to quickly go over quick edits, which are a feature we added in Berlin Update 2. So quick edits are a series of ways to quickly perform very common actions in the VCL form designer. The main quick edit operation, which is available for all components, opens the quick edit pane that lets you rapidly modify the name, caption, alignment, layout, and color of a control, if it's applicable to the control. Additional operations allow copying the component name, editing the images and image lists attached to a control, and binding the control to a data source or data field. You might not know that the new installer, the Get It or Feature installer, installs a basic IDE first. You can actually use it immediately as a text editor if you need, and then installs the platforms such as Win32 or macOS later. You can actually install more platforms at any time right from inside the IDE. In 10.2, we've added parallel downloads to the feature installer. It was already much faster than the traditional ISO installer, which is still available, but is now faster still. C++ Linux support is coming in RAD Studio 10.2.1. We didn't want to delay the release of 10.2 just because C++ Linux support was taking a little longer to complete than Delphi. But in 10.2.0 we have some great C++ enhancements in 3 key areas: the linker, code generation, and debugging. The first of these is linking. The linker is now large address aware, which allows you to take advantage of up to 4 GB of memory. It has greatly improved heap and resource handling, and we've tuned the linker and the various heaps and pools that it uses to modern debug usage or modern debug info generation. The vast majority of applications should experience smooth linking, and we've also added some project options to help handle any unusual applications. The second area is code generation. We have a new optimization level, 03, which is officially supported and in the IDE project options. This focuses on inlining and vectorization, and it can be up to 2 times faster than 02 for some code. We've also addressed many code gen issues with optimizations, exception handling, and so forth. This means that 10.2 has robust code gen and fast compiled code. The third area is debugging. So we have much better support for debugging C++ applications. One thing of note is that local variables in code built with the Clang-enhanced compilers for Win32 and especially Win64 can now be evaluated in watches or the local variables view. We've added a new feature from the classic Win32 compiler to the Clang Win32 compiler, external types, which greatly reduces debug info duplication and the size of the final debug output. So in 10.2, you'll see improvements in 3 key areas: linking, code gen, and debugging, which gives you new features, improved quality, and much faster compiled code in your applications.
Thanks, David. This is Marco, and I'm going to start covering shortly the support that RAD Studio has for building Windows 10 applications and then delve into Linux development. Windows 10 Store support was added in Berlin Update 2 Anniversary Edition last fall, and it allows you to take any existing VCL or FireMonkey Win32 or Win64 application and package it as an AppX using the Windows Desktop Bridge technology or Centennial Bridge technology. And that lets you create a universal Windows platform application that can be deployed and sold or distributed through the Windows Store. And we're actually very happy to have provided the first IDE to support the Desktop Bridge. That's not only in our words, but even in the words of Microsoft Vice President for the Windows Developer Platform, Kevin Gallo. So that was a significant accomplishment, improving our existing great support for Windows that includes support for the WinRT API of Windows 10, but again, also the deployment to the store. Of course, that was already in the last release, the Update 2 version of Berlin. What is completely new in RAD Studio 10.2 for Delphi only for now is the support of development for the Linux platform. Our support is for building Linux Intel 64-bit servers. That's not the entire universe that Linux supports, because Linux supports multiple different operating target CPUs, Intel 32-64-bit and ARM. Our initial focus is on Linux Intel 64-bit servers. And we decided to officially support 2 distributions that are from the 2 key families, the Debian family, that's actually Ubuntu 16, a long-term support, and from the Fedora Red Hat family, Red Hat Enterprise 7, which has professional enterprise support and is also available as a cloud solution. We expect applications to work on most distributions, but you have to make sure that you're importing the right libraries as a developer to have the proper bindings. What we support in this release is server-side technologies. We have provided the entire language, runtime library, including the database runtime library, IO utils, file access, the FireDAC data access library for most of the supported databases, as we'll see in a second, HTTP and REST clients, and along with ready-to-use cloud and MIP clients, web broker support for server-side, Apache integration, the ability to create an Apache module, DataSnap servers and clients, and of course, RAD Server, or the ability to build EMS modules. We also support JSON, XML processing, directly support for INDI, and many other core technologies that are part of our runtime library. What is missing, and we're not offering, at least in this first release is the ability to build user interfaces for Linux. Again, the target is 64-bit Intel compiler, 64-bit Intel platform. The compiler is based on the LLVM technology, like all of our latest compilers for new platforms. It's ARC-enabled and uses the standard string access model offered by Windows. Although there is no notion of an ANSI string, you can use Unicode strings, UTF-8 strings, or undefined raw strings. You do need a Linux box initially to import the SDK and the headers, and this is done by installing PA Server on the target Linux machine and connecting to it. You don't need a Linux box for compiling. Of course, you need Linux box for remote debugging if you want to, and we support remote debugging right into the IDE. This is possible through PA Server, the platform assistant server. This is a small utility you have to install by doing a copy, and run on your Linux server, similarly to what you do on a Mac for building Mac or iOS applications. And PA Server just sits there and receives commands from the IDE. So again, you can use it for deploying the applications directly or for remote debugging. Of course, you can take the executable you're building on Windows, upload them manually to your Linux box, and run them locally. If you deploy directly, you might have adjust file permissions just because Windows and Linux use different models in terms of file system. Again, as mentioned, we have support for a large number of features of the Delphi runtime library. This is just a very limited list. We have threading and parallel library, the access to POSIX headers, file system access, kernel exceptions, input-output utils, the core RTTI. The native HTTP client library, being a client library, is based on a client HTTP technology, in specifically libcurl, and the DOM and JSON processing are native. And we also support unit testing on Linux platform. In terms of database access, we have FireDAC drivers for all databases that make sense on Linux. Although technically you can have the database which is remote and not running on the same machine. We support MySQL, and actually we also added support for MariaDB, also for Windows in 10.2. Interbase, Firebird, Oracle, and many others. We have MongoDB support, Postgres. These are popular databases on the Linux platform. We don't support Informix, we don't support Microsoft Access or clients, the FireDAC clients for DataSnap and DB Express, but DataSnap clients, standalone DataSnap clients are supported. Again, the main focus is building server-side applications. You can do that by using IDE servers or using the web broker technology. If you're using web broker standalone, you're still using IDE behind the scenes, but you can also build web broker, DataSnap application through Apache, or deploy RAD server modules that integrate with Apache indirectly. In terms of client libraries, again, we have a number of clients that we support for reaching out other HTTP-based servers. So after this general introduction, let's delve into some actual code. This is RAD Studio 10.2, not much different from the previous versions, but what you can do right now is get here, create a new application, and I'm specifically going to pick a console application as a starting point. And I'm just going to write some fairly simple code here. And I'm also going to write a different thing, which is size of pointer, just to see that this is in fact a 64-bit compiler. I'm going to add also a read line so we can stop the execution specifically on Windows. So if we run this on Windows, we get hello and 4. Of course, we can also on Windows build it as a 64-bit Windows application, in which case we get hello and 8. But the other thing we can do is I can take on my Linux box here running inside VMware. I've already started PA Server on this machine. You can see this is PA Server running with a given IP address. Next, you have to configure your environment so that if I add the Linux platform, I add also a connection to this machine running PA Server that's used for deployment. And the other thing, I also have a SDK configure. I already imported the SDK from my Ubuntu machine. So having already done those steps, I'm ready to build the application. And again, the development is done completely on the Windows side. And I can then deploy the application and run it on my Windows. It's fairly simple and direct. And I've got my application running on Linux. Now the application is separately deployed. So there is actually a folder that's created. It's called the Scratch Dir. So if I exit from the PA Server, Scratch Dir, and I think it's Marco Ubuntu VM. This is my username and the name of the target machine. Here you can see that I've actually deployed a couple of applications. This is called Project 11. So inside the Project 11 folder, there is in fact my executable. So I can just run it directly, execute my Linux application. And if we examine it, this is my standalone application with debug information deployed on Linux. So that's a very simple demo, of course. Let's look into a couple of other slightly more interesting one. First, I'm going to reopen this extremely simple database application. It doesn't really do much, but it has a data module with a designer. It uses FDMM table as a simple local database. And then it has some pretty standard code for creating the output from a table and just logging it to the console. Or in this other case, creating a string list, writing to the string list. So this is standard code you'd write on the Windows platform. And then I'm saving the file to the home path delimiter list txt, and just displaying where the location of the file. This application uses local storage, and it loads a file. It is actually loaded by loading employee FDS. Now, I don't have to manually deploy the file to Linux because I automatically have deployment structure similar to the deployment structure that you would have for a mobile application. So I have my Linux data executable here and my employee FDS. This one was from an old demo. I can actually delete it. So when I can run the application, or I can just deploy the application. But before I do that, I need to get back. And now that I'm here, I just need to run PA Server 19 PA Server. So now I have my target working here, and I can just do the deployment if I want, or I can deploy and execute directly on the remote computer. So this is on my database data, and then the data has been saved to home Marco. So let me quit PA server, check the local folder, and there is this list txt file that I can examine, and it's the list of the names of inside this database table. So very simple, very easy to handle, including also including additional files. Is quite straightforward through the standard deployment mechanism. And here I'm using very simple runtime library, database tables, file system operations, very smooth and reasonably simple when moving from the Windows world. Now these are all applications that are just standalone applications. I can create a new web broker application for Delphi, and my web server application, if I do Windows only, I have many options. If I pick Linux, I'm limited to standalone or Apache. Now I already built an Apache module that I'm going to show in a second, but for step by step, let's go through the development of a console application. I can pick a port, just generate the code. It's very straightforward. There are some basic commands that I can execute, and I can also get it started automatically. So I can do a start server when the system starts. And I have my web module unit here where I can drop components or do specific code. In this case, I'm just going to implement the default predefined action. And in my default handler, I'm going to write some very simple replacement code, Delphi for Linux made this. So now all I have to do is add the Linux target. Actually, it is already there. Everything is configured, so I can just run and deploy my application on my Linux box, well, provided I restart PA server on the machine, of course. Let me do that and restart and deploy the application. The server should automatically start. And so now I can open my browser and go to the port 8080 on that Linux machine. The port is 8080, and this is my simple HTML response from the machine. I'm going to do another step, which is creating DataSnap server, actually DataSnap REST application. Again, picking Linux, standalone, port 8080, and go for the sample files. Pick T component as a base class, and the web module should have the standard DataSnap code, including web module unit and the AQ string, reverse string server methods. I can run it on Windows, and if I start the server, it starts locally and I can access to it. But I'm actually going to close it because what I want to do is actually run it, build it, and deploy it on a Linux box. So here I've deployed the application to the Linux box, And now I've gone to my scratch there. This is called project 4. So let's do project 4/project 4. This is our data snap server. I can start it. And now I can go to my browser. My method, the class is tserver methods 1, and the reverse string is the function I'm calling. And I'm calling hello Linux and getting that reversed. I can also go to the main site, and because by deploying with PA server, I've actually deployed the entire set of files, including the JavaScript support for my reverse string operation with Linux. Not only the executable, but the entire deployment has been done, providing JavaScript, HTML templates, and images alongside. The last thing I want to show is, and I've already built the source code here, so I'm just going to open an existing project of this is my Apache module. I just followed the steps and built an Apache module, and the Apache module generates a lib mod webworker SO. So notice that the instruction we're giving here are actually incorrect, because this is the Windows instruction. On Linux it's lib in front of the library, and then SO is the standard extension. So this is a very simple module. The code simply does display some pretty basic HTML. And then what I've done, I've deployed it to my Linux box. And what I've done, let me stop the previous server and exit from it. I've gone to my etc Apache 2 configuration, and inside the mods enabled, I've actually copied the module there, which is, well, it's not how you should configure things, but fine anyway. So there's this lib mod web broker SO with its configuration and its loading information. So if we edit the lib web broker dot load, first thing is to load the module with the load module directive inside the Apache configuration. And you need to refer to the specific SO file and give the web module a name, which actually must match the internal module, so you can pick that module name. So this is called webbroker _module _new _module. The other configuration file is the virtual configuration. So what I've done here is actually I've defined a virtual URL as part of a website, actually of the main website in this case. It's called Delphi_new, and whenever your path includes the Delphi new location, the Apache will redirect the call to this specific application, specific module, actually to the handler defined by the module, and it's allowed to everyone. So if Apache is running, which I'm actually not sure. Okay, well, it was already running. Let me check to the main site. This is my Apache running, and then if I use the Delphi_new location, this is my server application built with Delphi for Linux as an Apache module installed into this Ubuntu VM. The last part of my portion of the slides, beside the Linux support and other features, we've also done some significant improvements for 10.2 in FireDAC. FireDAC is our high performance, easy to use enterprise database connectivity that now supports Linux and it already supports Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. There are some global changes in FireDAC for all platforms, including MariaDB support and support for a newer version of MySQL, direct input-output on Fireboard, and a new method for design time operations on an FDMEM table that I'm going to demonstrate in a second. There are also some changes in the database runtime library, some improvements in blob streaming. The TDB image supports JPEG and PNG graphic formats in blobs. There's also support for display options in blob fields that can be used by a grid. Finally, there is a new version of interface that's just shipped. However, we're not deploying it currently with RAD Studio 10.2. It will come in a future version. So right now, RAD Studio still ships with Interface XC7, but would recommend downloading the trial and testing Interface 2017. Actually, you already have a developer license for Interface 2017 as part of your RAD Studio 10.2 installation. Let me do a short demo for these additional database features. I have a project here that uses very simple FDMEM table and shows some information about it. Notice that there's a new command here. I can edit the dataset, so I can actually get here and make change to my data directly with no need to use an external tool. So it's a very simple way for building even an in-memory table structure and enter some data into it. That's one feature I wanted to show. The other feature is something that we built already in Berlin Update 2, which is the ability to bind data source and data fields through the quick edit capabilities of the product. So it's very simple to connect a data source and a data field. The last thing I want to show is you might notice this grid has something different than the past, and the reason is that in this remarks field, there is actually the ability to describe how to display the value. In the past, you'd see something like this, just simply memo, because that was the class. You can now clip the text, so has as much text as it fits with ellipses, or fit the text if it fits, or display memo, or have full text. So whatever the amount of text is, I mean, they just display everything, again, clipped with the physical available space. So you can easily display the memos in a grid without having to manually customize the display information. It's a very simple update, but certainly something nice to add. And that was what I wanted to show. So next is Serena.
Thanks, Marco. RAD Studio 10.2 provides many new library features. With FireMonkey in 10.2, you can build faster Android UIs with enhanced thread support. The Delphi and Java threads on Android have been unified in 10.2, and call-in UI thread has been deprecated. And what that means is that all code is now running in a Java UI thread, removing the need for thread synchronization. And some of these changes were also made in preparation for the Android Z order and native control support, which we're planning on introducing in the future. Now, another great new feature that we've added to FireMonkey in 10.2 is multi-threading support for tBitmap, tCanvas, and tContext 3D. We've also added new FireMonkey styles for Mac OS and Android Wear that you can easily apply to your application using the stylable component. And in addition, we've enhanced our multi-view component with better user interaction management. And on iOS, we've also added 2 new properties for changing the behavior of the system status bar. So now you can set the visibility and fill color of the iOS status bar to match your toolbar color, for example, or you could choose to hide it altogether. Now in RAD Studio 10.2, the HTTP client library now provides support for 64-bit Linux with improved async support. Now Delphi 10.2 provides Linux file system support using standard system functions, streams, and the IO utils unit. It also provides standard RTL path function support for 64-bit Linux. Now, when it comes to our app tethering components, we've also made some enhancements to those in 10.2 by adding several new properties to control event synchronization with the main thread. In RAD Studio 10.2, we also provide new and improved hash functions. Now, RAD Server is our turnkey RAD application server that provides a robust out-of-the-box back-end platform on which you can build and deploy your Delphi and C++ Builder application services. Now, if you're not familiar with RAD Server, I encourage you to have a look. We provide some great demos out of the box to get you started, and all of the technologies that are part of RAD Server are available and included for development as part of your Enterprise and Architect Edition. And then there's a separate deployment license that you can purchase when you're ready to deploy your RAD Server solution. Now, RAD Server provides automated Delphi and C++ REST and JSON API publishing and management, enterprise data integration middleware, IoT edgeware, and an array of application services. Now, those services range from user directory and authentication, push notification support across multiple platforms like iOS and Android, beacon fence support, which is our indoor and outdoor geolocation services support, and JSON data storage. Now, new in 10.2 for RAD Server is our multi-tenancy support. Now, what that means is that with multi-tenancy support, a single RAD Server instance with a single RAD Server database connection can now support multiple isolated tenants. So you can do a single RAD Server deployment with a single RAD Server database and support multiple tenants. Each tenant has a unique set of RAD Server resources, including users, groups, installations, ThinkPoint Edge modules, and also other data. Now, RAD Server with multi-tenancy support in 10.2 can be deployed to both Windows and Linux servers. Now, if you're thinking about a retail store use case scenario, each store with its employees and goods would be a separate tenant implementation, and then you can set up groups for each tenant and permissions. So in a retail use case scenario, managers would be in the manager group and cashiers would be in the cashier group. And for example, managers could add new store items, delete them, or edit details of existing items. And then the cashiers would only be able to view items and information about existing goods. And neither employee can see the information about the other stores in the chain. Because with multi-tenancy support, you can support multiple isolated tenants with a single RAD Server instance with a single RAD Server database connection. And we have a great demo that's included in 10.2 that you can have a look at to help you get started using multi-tenancy support in RAD Server. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Stephen Ball, who's going to talk about 10.2 SKUs and offers. Stephen?
Thank you, Serena. And looking at everything we've just seen through this webinar so far, just as we draw to a close here, looking at the IDE updates with the C++ compiler and much improved debugging and large memory support, looking at the first LLVM Linux compiler for Delphi, which is a much better experience being able to run it directly from the IDE and out to Linux, formed on top of the stuff that we've been doing for Mac for a number of years. This is great stuff, and I'm very much looking forward to having a play and updating some of my old projects as well. So let's have a quick look at how you can get your hands onto this and what different versions are available for the 10.2 release. So pretty much as before, 10.2 comes as either RAD Studio, Delphi or C++. RAD Studio includes both the languages with all three products providing the RAD Studio IDE, but RAD Studio provides both the Delphi and the C++ language in there. Just also of note, obviously, we saw earlier that Interbase 2017 has been released, The latest version is now available, which is seeing a huge up demand, especially with the new language features like derived tables and common table expressions in there, which is helping a lot of people who are moving from other databases across to Interbase at the moment, with some changes that are happening around kind of ISV programs. So if you're affected by that, definitely worth having a look at Interbase 2017. So for the 10.2 SKUs, we've now made officially the starter edition free. So during the Berlin 10.1 release time, we had a lot of promotions around this, which is the first step to actually be able to say we are now officially making this a free version. So if you know anybody who you'd like to get involved with developing for the first time, then the starter edition really is the place for them to start. And obviously take advantage of Marco Cantu's brilliant Object Pascal handbook if you're using the Delphi side of things, and keep an eye out on David Millington's blog around the C++ language for some great starter tutorials and pointers there. With the professional edition in 10.2, you have full local database access. That's powered by FireDAC with a full array of local database connectivity. The Windows and Mac compilers for both VCL and FireMonkey. And also, as an additional option, you can get the mobile add-on packs or the FireDAC add-on pack to allow you to have cross-network database connectivity. Now, the mobile add-on pack is included in RAD Studio Professional. So if you are looking at Professional and you're not sure which version, it might actually be not a lot of difference to go for the RAD Studio Professional and get the mobile packs included. And obviously, getting RAD Studio is going to provide you with both Delphi and C++ compilers. When it comes to enterprise development, then obviously having the mobile add-on and the FireDAC add-on packs included within the product is one of the major reasons people go for enterprise nowadays. But also there's the great modern middle tier development technologies for DataSnap and RAD Server Developer Edition, which are well worth having a look at. And with the offers that we've got going on at the moment, that is something that's really, really worth having a look at too. For cross-compilation between Windows and Linux, then you're going to need to be looking at Enterprise or above anyway, because they're based on the server-side technologies that are part of the Enterprise editions. So if you're looking at moving on to the Delphi for Linux, you need to be on the Enterprise edition. The Architect edition provides you basically everything you get in Enterprise, but it also includes some very powerful database tools with ER Studio for reverse engineering and modeling your databases, share your schema from a pictorial view, but also the database power tools. The developer edition there allows you to connect up to SQL Server, Oracle, DB2 and so on to actually view what the database server is doing and see what queries are running on the server to be able to identify where your slowdown or your issues potentially are on the server. So the Architect edition, definitely if you're doing any database development, is well worth finding out more about what those database tools offer, because they are, the developer editions that are bundled in with Architect are a huge saving in terms of buying those tools separately as well. So definitely worth having a look at. So we do have some early bird offerings here running. 10% off on RAD Studio, Delphi and C++ Enterprise, plus we're getting a free RAD Server base license with 10 user license on top of it. So that's almost $1,000 worth of additional software. With the Architect edition, the early bird offer through to the end of the month includes 15% off Architect, plus there's a free RAD Server site license. That's worth almost $5,000. So that is a very powerful thing to have as well. Now, running through to the end of the month, Amnesty is available as well. So if you are looking to upgrade, you've got to the 31st of March to get some sizable discounts. So you can get Amnesty if you're upgrading from a really old version, plus you can then get 15% off the upgrade. So it is a very powerful offering right now. Now, something we're actually adding new in with 10.2 from a product point of view is 2 new suites. Now, these suites are in a sense a bundled product, and that enables you to get RAD Studio Enterprise or architect, plus a RAD server site license, and on top of that, interbase server licensing. So this full bundle allows you to do the database side through the middle tier with the RAD server, and then the client side development for both Windows, Mac, iOS and Android with RAD Studio in either Delphi or C++. So that includes the latest interbase, the latest RAD server, the latest RAD Studio, and these are new user licenses at a better price than an upgrade would be because of what we're bundling in there. So this is close to and even over 50% discount on the new pricing when you buy the suites. Now, finally, more information about RAD Studio, please visit the Embarcadero website at www.embarcadero.com and have a look through the product pages there. Also, kind of check out the community. There's a huge number of blogs and events going up through there. We've got webinars every week. There's been some great webinars run recently. If you're looking to get onto Linux for the first time, definitely worth having a look through some of the masterclasses and the bootcamp videos that have been run there. If you're looking at RAD Server for the first time, definitely check out community and search for the IoT bootcamp and have a look at the great stuff that was done there, including connecting up with kind of IoT devices through RAD Server and then exposing them out beyond just our own languages to other programming languages like C# and AngularJS and so on. So some great stuff on community to get your teeth into. Finally, docwiki.embarcadero.com for all of our products for the latest online documentation is the must-go place. So that brings us to the end today. Thank you everybody for joining us. We're now going to open up the line for Q&A with the product management team. If you are watching this live, then please do use your GoToWebinar control panel just to type your questions in if you haven't done so already, and those questions are going to be answered right now.
Okay, fantastic. Lots of great questions already in here. If you do have any other questions, feel free to type them now and we'll get them answered for you. We've got the entire product management team online with us. Marco Cantu, Serena DuPont, Stephen Ball, David Millington, and Nick Hodges is here. So one of the questions that came up here a few times is the different SKUs and Linux being available in the enterprise and architect SKU and not being in the professional SKU. So I want to take, Marco, do you want to take care of that one?
Sure. The main reason is that Linux is, we target the professional SKU as a SKU for building local client applications, applications that with access to local databases. And this doesn't fit into the scenario of why you're building applications on Linux. Now it's true that some customers might be interested in an application just running locally, collecting data, doing operations without any remote access via internet, without building any three-tier web or web service application. But that's really a corner case. The majority of our customers meant to use Linux, and the way we built the solution around Linux is for building multi-tier web services or web applications. And those don't really fit into the idea we have for the professional version. So that's why they're tagged for enterprise, regardless of the fact that someone is using, it's not DataSnap or RAD Server, that's the discriminator, or FireDAC, which would also be missing. It's more the user scenario, and we don't feel that deploying to Linux fits into the use for building local client applications.
Yeah, and somebody did share the video that Dimitri had done about the FireMonkey application on Linux, so I knew it wouldn't take too much time for someone to figure that out. I was surprised it was that quick, but I guess I shouldn't have been surprised with Dimitri, right?
Eugene, you mentioned, yes.
Oh, yeah, Eugene, yes, sorry. It's early. Eugene, correct. So, David, someone's asking about C++ Builder Linux support. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Sure. So that's coming in the next release, which is 10.2.1. A side note there, we used to speak about updates, so we would have sort of update 1 or update 2. We've moved away from that to talking about those as releases. And the reason for that is that we're moving to a model where we actually have a lot more content and new features in a release, and so we want the name to carry the fact that you actually get a lot more new stuff. End of the side note, no, that's just why it's the 10.2.1 release, and C++ for Linux is coming in that release.
So is it major releases versus minor releases now? Is that the idea?
I think everything is a release. We basically just want to keep on rolling out new features and functionality for people on update subscription over the year, and the major release is really where we will allow interface breaking changes, which is one of the major things. We had a lot of customer feedback in the past when we were doing 6 monthly releases that was too often, especially for interface breaking releases, and so that's yearly, and so we're now sort of rolling out higher functionality and feature containing releases more often during the year. As far as C++ goes, I don't have an exact date on that yet, so I won't mention one, but shouldn't be too long. That's just the point release 10.2.1 will contain C++ for Linux.
Okay. There's a question here about debugging Apache modules on Linux. Is that something you want to handle, Marco?
Yeah, I can handle it. I haven't tried it personally. I've tried with other hosting applications, not Apache itself. And it might be a little more tricky because you need to run it with specific permissions. In general, you can run a host application on Linux and providing a library as parameter in a similar way you can do on Windows. You can also attach to a process running on Linux. You can actually do that on other platforms through RAD Server. So the idea is, yes, you can attach to an existing process that's running something. Now, it might be a little more tricky than that, specifically because Apache runs with root permission, so that might get a bit in the way. And I haven't personally tried it, but I think I've seen a demo in which this was actually working.
Okay. Serena, here's a question about the team multi-view in the structure panel. Victor's saying that if he click show, it doesn't show the component like it did in Berlin. Is that something you can comment on? I'm not quite sure exactly what he's asking here, to be honest.
Yeah, I told Victor it would be best if he could send me an email directly, because I'm not able to reproduce this on my end. If I drag and drop the team multi-view onto the form, I can change the width for the different target platforms and override the defaults. But it would be ideal if, Victor, if you could please file a bug at quality.embarcadero.com and then send me the bug number with reproducible steps, then I can have a look at that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, Serena's email address is up on the screen still. So the bonus pack is, Rob has some questions about it being available for Tokyo.
If by bonus pack, you mean the ability to use Konopka controls and radian shapes?
Yes.
Those, yeah, those are going to be made available. We don't have an exact time frame, but should be reasonably short. And the other thing that's missing on Get It is the IoT components. Those hopefully should be available within a few days. We're doing some final testing on those.
Okay, great. Mac OS 64-bit support. I know it's on the roadmap, isn't it? Marco?
It's something that we have mentioned as that was going to be the focus after getting Linux 64-bit out. Now, as you can imagine, given there is a lot in common between the Linux world and the Mac OS, they share the same foundation and a lot of core technologies. It's clearly a Mac OS 64-bit compiler would be similar. I mean, we'll share some code and some technology with the Linux 64-bit compiler. So Linux is one step towards also getting Mac 64-bit.
Now there's questions around different versions of Linux, different distros of Linux. And I know generally the rule of thumb is that by the time you finish testing one distribution, two more have appeared. We're officially supporting Ubuntu and Red Hat. What about SUSE or some of the other larger distros? Do we have any plans to sufficiently support those, or should they just work, or what's the likelihood of that? Marco?
We've seen a lot of reports from beta testers that applications work on a number of distributions, mostly those that are in the same family of those we support. So Ubuntu means Debian and related distributions also are covered, and Red Hat kind of implies Fedora and other that are part of the same family. SUSE is a bit in its own, so it might take a little extra effort. Now, it boils down to having the right libraries installed on the machine. We do link to a couple of external libraries like curl for HTTP clients or libraries for compression and so on. And so that's where some incompatibilities might happen. But we are expecting to be able, that you should be able to target a significant number of distributions. The other thing that's one side is development, because for development we need to import the SDK from the given machine, and then again importing the SDK gives us the right links to dynamic libraries that are needed. And so you might be able to target more distributions, but need to use a more limited set for building, again, for importing the SDK, because the compiler is actually running exclusively on Windows. But the compiler reads information from the Linux distribution in terms of libraries, and that information I really recommend using one of those distributions as a starting point.
Now, for those out there that have a different version of RAD Studio already installed, like XE7, and they're wanting to take advantage of some of this great 10.2 goodness, do they have to uninstall XE7, or could they install the two versions side by side? Marco?
Yes, you can always install separate main versions, so Berlin and Tokyo, not Tokyo and Tokyo Release 1 or Berlin and Berlin Update 2. The recommendation is to install them in sequence and not in reverse order, so starting from the oldest ones. That would solve issues that we only in only a few instances we do replace a file with a newer version, only for the few shared files. They're really a handful. So the recommendation is to install in sequence, and this is expected to work. You can install multiple versions of RAD Studio on the same physical machine or virtual machine.
There's a few questions here around configuring Linux. Craig Chapman has a really good guide on setting up Linux, Red Hat, and Ubuntu and everything involved. And actually, I've seen a number of MVPs have written similar guides for other distros as well as in other languages. I think there's a Spanish one and a Portuguese one. So if you Google around or check out some of the community site, you probably can find some of those guides out there. Let's see. There's a question here about multi-threading of tBitmap and tcanvas. Is that for both platforms, iOS and Android?
Yes, it is.
And
we have a really good DocWiki article on that as well. If you go to docwiki.embarcadero.com and click on the What's New link, you can see all the great features that we introduced in this 10.2 release, and also links to detailed step-by-step documentation. I saw some questions earlier about Linux setup and deployment, and we have step-by-step instructions, including screenshots that you can find if you go to docwiki.embarcadero.com.
Great, yes. Yeah, the DocWiki's got lots of good information in it. Starter Edition, still free? Is that limited time, or is that going to be going on for a while, or what's going on with this awesome offer? Stephen?
Yeah, no, Starter is free. We've had tens of thousands of people downloading the Starter Edition and it's something we want to keep going as free. The only thing to note, obviously, is if you do move up from free, because you want to have some of the the extra stuff that's in Pro or Enterprise or above, then you will need to uninstall the Starter Edition before you install the Pro or above. But other than that, absolutely, it's free. So do share and tell people and get people coding.
Premium Style Pack, is there going to be new styles coming out with Tokyo?
There is a style pack available for Tokyo. It's the same link that we had for Berlin. So it's actually the same style pack that will work with both Berlin and Tokyo, and using the same Code Central link. So if you've already downloaded it for Berlin, those same styles should be able to be loaded into a stylable component and used in Tokyo.
So what version of Interbase, Stephen, comes with Tokyo? Is it the new 2017 or is it XE7?
Marco mentioned it earlier in the presentation, but XE7 is shipping with 10.2, purely from the point that 2017 has only just been released at the beginning of this month. So just from a time point to do all the kind of additional QA bits, it wasn't time to kind of get it fitted in. But in the license, you do have the developer edition license for both XE7 and also 2017. So if you want to take advantage of all the new kind of cool features, language features within 2017, then you can go and do that. It's free to download. There's still kind of a 90-day trial if you want to use that and test that through on different machines as well. And also from a Linux point of view, Interbase actually has a broader supported platform base for Linux. So if you are looking to get onto SUSE as well, then that's covered. So yeah, both available basically, but only the binary for XE7 is shipped.
There's a question here about FireDAC versus DB Express, about DB Express being deprecated now. Is that correct? And since when and why is DB Express deprecated? Marco?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we've mentioned several times that DB Express was in maintenance mode and not having any further development. I'm not sure if this is officially written in the documentation, and we're still supporting it on Windows. But it is true that we're not doing any further development, and we haven't done in the last few years because the focus has been squarely on FireDAC. And FireDAC is the only database access layer that we provide across all platforms.
Now on the Starter Edition, does it support add-on packages or not? I know the Turbo Editions didn't, but I thought the Starter Edition did support add-on packages.
It technically does.
Okay. So you can install components and stuff in there. That's what I thought.
You can install components, yeah, that's the point.
So there's...
sorry, another thing about database access that I saw that I wanted to comment about is client dataset. It's not working right now on Linux just because it requires a DLL, what was Midas DLL on Windows, is libmidas SO on Linux. And apparently we failed to distribute that file, but so we rectified it and made the file available. The plan was to have client dataset available, and we'll try to get that done as soon as possible.
So there's various questions about different third-party component vendors, whether or not they're going to support Linux, specifically fast report. I'll go ahead and answer this. A lot of them are working towards that. I've talked to a number of the tech partners that are working towards that. Your best bet is to talk to them directly. So I don't know if anybody heard anything specifically around fast reports. Yeah, so talk to them directly. I know a lot of them are working towards it. Some of them already have released Linux support and Tokyo support. I remember TMS had some blog posts around that recently, so very exciting to see everyone adding Linux support. I know they're very excited about that as well. Lots of positive feedback here. People are very excited about the new features, what's going on here. DB or DUnit X apparently is not in Tokyo. Is that going to come through Git, or is that, what's the status of that? Nick, do you want to answer that one? If you can. Or Marco.
Sorry, I was on mute. I don't know. I'll have to turn that over to the... Should be delivered with the product. I don't know why it wouldn't be.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed the question.
DUnit X, is that, do you know if that's in the, should have been in the release, or?
To my knowledge, it is already, and it is working. If it's not working, it's a bug, because we want to have unit testing on Linux.
Okay. Another question related to Git about the Jedi packages. Actually, there was some miscommunication and they got removed, but we're working with the Jedi team to get them back in Git going forward. So hopefully, we've got someone new that's working full-time on Git maintenance and support, so hopefully we'll see a better job with that being maintained in the future. Yeah, Claudio saying, after 2 days of use of Tokyo, you can only say great release. I've had a lot of people, I'm regularly talking with Boyan Mitov of Mitov Software, which if you don't know his components, he does like a lot of amazing stuff that really pushes the what Delphi can do. And I'm regularly dealing with him with compiler issues he's dealing with, just because, you know, like I said, he pushes it quite a bit, but he was blown away. It's probably a half an hour on Skype with him, just going on and on about how excited he was with all the features, all the bug fixes in Tokyo. So really, that's always exciting for me. Wow, okay, lots of comments here. Does FireMonkey on Android support GIF images now, or GIF images depending on your pronunciation preference? Serena? Is that something
we did not expand the bitmap control specifically for GIFs. One thing you could consider doing is loading them into a web browser control on your form, and that should work.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. GIFs are kind of in a interesting status, it seems like. I thought they were going away for a while, but they're kind of making a comeback now.
Yeah, they were so popular like 10 years or so ago, and then they went away, and then they just, they were used for all the different banner ads and all that online, and then they went away, and then they just made a comeback recently, somewhat recently.
Let's see. Wow, lots of positive feedback. Windows Store support is for Windows 10 Store. Let's see. Does it support live tiles, or is it FireMonkey only, VCL? Or Marco?
Sorry, no, we support both FireMonkey and VCL for Windows Store. In theory, given you have the ability to create, to call WinRT APIs even beyond the APIs that we officially support and translate headers for, everything can be done. But we don't have support for tiles, Cortana, and a few other features that we're looking forward to make it easy to use. I mean, right now they are probably doable technically, but in a fairly complex way. So we're considering next steps in rounding up the support for the WinRT layer, including push notifications and tiles, but those are not in the current release.
Okay. And the Windows 10 Store support, you can self-publish those AppX files as well as put them through the store, correct, Marco?
Yes.
Okay. David Millington, the question here about C++ linker enhancements. Are there plans to add runtime type information, support type routing for C++ types, etc.?
Well, that's a good question. So we do support some RTCI, Delphi-style RTCI already. Type routing is difficult. I'm not sure if the question, I can't see it on the screen right now, is asking about Delphi-style or C++ style. Obviously in C++ we don't have type routing. For Delphi style RTTI, we still don't currently support type-rooted RTTI, and we are thinking about stuff like that. What would be particularly good is if you can contact us. I mean, feel free to drop me an email and explain what what things you need. We're always happy to hear from you when it comes to feature requests, and yeah, no, that'd be interesting to hear from you about that.
So the question here about the change in the threading model for Android, as far as how is that going to work? What kind of impacts do people need to make changes to deal with that different threading model? Marco, looks like, could you handle that one?
Yeah, that's not trivial because it depends ultimately on the code you're writing. We have seen wrappers with issues around animations and other elements, because animations used to be running on our thread. Now they run in the thread that's shared with the Java side, and so they are probably a little more troublesome. So you might need to do extra operations in background threads and change a bit the way you're synchronizing those threads with the main thread. The impact is quite severe, but the change has been a complete and very big change that was done because that's the only way to be able in the future to build platform controls. I mean, having buttons, edits, and other controls that are actually based on the operating system rather than being FireMonkey level style controls like we're doing on iOS and Windows. So it's a change that will have some effects, and we're still doing some investigations on some of the reports we're receiving around those. But it's a change that's needed to be able to move in the direction we want FireMonkey to go.
So the next question here, Serena, kind of dovetails into that. Are we planning to add more native UI controls for Android and iOS?
Yes, we do have plans for that. For iOS, if there are specific requests for additional controls beyond what we support today with native rendering support at the OS level, please send me an email. I'd like to hear from you on what specifically you're looking for. For iOS today, we have the ability to select between native rendering using the underlying operating system or using the built-in style, and we have that for select controls. In addition to that, we also have Z-order support so that style controls and natively rendered controls can coexist on the same plane, and that is something that we're looking at adding for Android as well. And that's to touch on what Marco was saying. We started that process with the unification of the Java thread and the Delphi thread in 10.2. And in the future, we're planning on adding Z-order support for Android, just like we have on iOS today, as well as natively supporting select controls. And we'll be looking at controls like t-edit and t-memo, specifically text input controls, and then expanding it to other controls like the list view control, etc., just like we did on iOS.
And so about the indie version that we're providing across all platforms as well as Linux, what version of indie are we shipping, and is there plans to change that in the near future?
I don't remember the version number, but I think we did an update 2 or 3 months ago, a couple of months ago, and grabbed the latest change. And we also had some discussion with Remy about some issues, and so we are in constant touch with the indie team, and tend to get fairly recent versions when we ship our product.
Okay. So the question here about if we're planning to bring the IDE to other platforms, Mac, Linux, Symbian, I don't know. Any, Marco, comments on that?
I'll leave it to
Actually,
David
I can
if he take it.
Sure. We don't have any plans at the current time that we can discuss. But again, this kind of thing is the sort of thing we'd be interested in hearing feedback about. So if this is important to you, please drop us or specifically drop me an email.
Yes, David, that's right. You're in charge of the IDE. TrollEdge, actually, if you're wanting to find an editor that you can use on other platforms, TrollEdge is a pretty nice one. It's written in Delphi and FireMonkey. It works on Mac OS, I think Android and iOS as well. So take a look at that. How about, is there any way you could do animated images within a tree view in FireMonkey?
You know, I was just looking at that question. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure. It's something I'm going to have to look into. I can't really answer that at this point. I'll have to have a closer look to see if that's something that's possible. We didn't specifically add anything in 10.2 for that. If that's your question, if something has changed between 10.1 Berlin and 10.2 in regards to that, we didn't do anything specifically for that. But I'll have a look at that question, and I'll try to get back to you, Raphael, offline on that after the webinar.
You could probably do something where you're, depending on how complicated an animation you want, where you have multiple frames as different images and then just use something to change those images out at a rate. But just off the cuff idea there. But yeah, follow up with Serena. She's really good at that sort of thing and she can help you out. Okay, I think we've gotten through most of the questions here. I'm hopefully got them all. I know that you guys have other meetings and stuff to get to, so any last comments before we wrap up here? We'll start with Stephen. Stephen, any last comments? I know you're not feeling well today.
No, nothing else to add. Great questions, and yeah, some really, really interesting kind of Q&A stuff. I've seen a few people saying that Q&A has been actually really fun to listen to, and certainly it has been. So that's cool.
It's great to see so much excitement. That is true. Serena, any last comments you want to make?
Well, we're really excited about the 10.2 release. If you haven't tried it yet, please download a trial. If you're an update subscription, you'll be able to use your existing licenses to download and install 10.2 Tokyo. We also added the RAD Server multi-tenancy support, as was discussed during the presentation. We have a great sample application that you can have a look at that uses a toy store chain as a sample to highlight multi-tenancy support. And it'd be great to get your feedback. So if you try out RAD Server support with either Windows servers or Linux servers, now added in 10.2, please feel free to send me an email because I'd love to get your feedback on what you think about RAD Server in general and if you've had a chance to try out our multi-tenancy support.
Great. Marco, any last comments?
Yeah, I'm really excited to get Linux out. It's been in the works for some time now, and we were hoping to deliver it sooner. It's great to have it now. It's a great platform. It's so much nicer and cheaper than Windows for deploying your web services. I'm also personally a big fan of Apache. I have always had all my web service running on Apache, even on Windows. And so having the ability, again, to start deploying application written with Delphi on Linux is something that I've been looking forward for some long time, and I'm probably going to buy a new server hosting plan within this week and start deploying stuff to a Linux box.
Yeah, very exciting. David Millington, last comments.
I just want to thank everyone for attending, and yeah, the Q&A has been fantastic as well. It's been great on this side to see so many questions come in and so many interested and really happy comments as well. It's a great thing to read how many people are very excited about this release. That's really, really cool to hear. And yes, I just want to thank everyone for attending, and you are always welcome to contact any of the PM team with feature requests and sort of feedback and that kind of thing. You're just echoing the question, the last question that I answered, asking for that. It's always great to hear from you.
Okay, fantastic. And Nick Hodges, any last comments, mentions?
Just want to say thanks everybody, and we're excited about the 10.2 release.
Fantastic, yes. One comment I'll make is I occasionally run into people that are grumbling about some bug or something not working for them, and as soon as they create a support ticket or bug report, is kind of the thing that we need to start making action happen on that. And I just had some guy that was really frustrated about a bug, and he opened a support ticket, and the support engineer came back with a solution for him, and he was thrilled. So it's important that if there is something that's not working for you, that you do create a bug report, and you're most likely on update subscription, and open a support ticket. And you might be surprised. Those support engineers are really sharp and really good at getting those workarounds put together or solutions. So definitely check that out if you're having issues. Make sure that you're doing what you need to do so that we can help you. So that's what one last comment I'd make there about that, just to make sure that you're getting the support you need, because we do have lots of support avenues opened, and those are the ones that are going to give you the most productivity back. So fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I'm very excited for Linux, as I'm sure all of you are. So we're going to let you go so you can get busy installing Linux and running all of your great new server-side applications. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hi everyone.
So first question is, can we compile our Delphi 7 projects in RAD Studio and have them work on Linux? Marco, is that something you want to answer?
Well, Delphi 7 is not exactly new, so you might be using some coding style that's not directly available at this point, like strings that still are ANSI based and not Unicode enabled, or similar issues. And overall, the compatibility is pretty high, but it's pretty high coming from recent versions of Delphi. If you are jumping in from some fairly old version, you might have to clean up a few things, like string being an example, but there are probably others that need to have a second look. Also the coding style, some of the newer RTL mechanisms, from IOUtils to the parallel library, where you have code that uses those new features that are available on Linux only if your code is relatively recent, meaning the last 2 or 3 years.
Okay, great, thank you. David Millington, there's a question here about when C++ for Linux will be available. Okay, C++ for Linux is coming soon in the next minor release. Anybody want to add anything to that? David's muted for some reason. Okay.
No, I mean, David would have said that we were trying to get C++ and Delphi for Linux out at the same time. However, the Delphi side of the product was at a very good level, while C++ was a little behind, so we decided not to delay both, but to release what was available, that was Delphi, and then push the C++ version in 10.2.1, or release 1 of 10.2 Tokyo, that we are hoping to ship fairly soon.
Great, thank you. Can Linux console apps use timers? I know they have a data module where you can put other things in there, but can you put a timer in there, Marco?
That's a good question. I think you can. I'm not sure if I've tried to do that. We do render. I mean, the timers in itself is a Windows concept, but we do have timers across all other platforms, and they are, I mean, artificially built on top of core APIs. So I think we should have timers working.
All right. Well, we'll have to try that, and if it's not, I guess we will kind of file a bug at quality.embarcadero.com.
Sure, absolutely. Although the other thing to note is that if you want to, I mean, if you need to execute code at a very strict interval, yeah, that's certainly a possibility. If you want to execute code on a regular basis, but let's say every 10 minutes or every hour, then you shouldn't, keep the app running and use timers, but you should use a cron job, which is just a very simple configuration that will, every X minute or at that minute of the hour or whatever, will just start the application with given parameters. That's kind of the Linux way of doing things from time to time.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Parse is still listed as a BaaS provider we support, Serena, but since they no longer do hosting, is that something you can still use the Parse components with the self-hosted version of Parse?
Yeah, that's something that we're looking into more. If you have an existing application that you built with those components, those should still work, and theoretically you should be able to use it with the self-hosted version as well, but we haven't really done a lot of analysis on that. Kinvey is a supported BaaS provider as well, and we do have some examples that show you how to connect, actually many examples that show you how to connect using Kinvey. So if you're looking for a hosted solution, I would recommend having a look at Kinvey.
It seems like I've seen some blog posts about using self-hosted Parse, but I don't know the problem with Parse is that when you Google Parse, it has too many different meanings. Let's see. Is the 10.2 a full upgrade from 10.1, or is it a minor upgrade from 10.1? In other words, can you install 10.2 and 10.1 side by side, or are they two separate? Or does one replace the other one?
They can be installed side by side. They're both two major version releases. So 10.1 Berlin was a major version release, and 10.2 Tokyo is a separate major version release, so they can coexist on the same system. They do require, 10.2 requires a full install because it's a brand new version of the product.
Okay. So it looks like David Millington's having some audio or some sort of connectivity issues because he's having, so I'm not sure if he'll be around or not. We'll see. If not, you have his email up on the screen and you can send him an email and tell him how awesome C++ Builder is. He loves those emails. He gets them all the time. So there was a video went around showing by Eugene showing that he had FireMonkey working on Linux. Do we have plans to do FireMonkey on Linux, or is that just something cool Eugene pulled off? Marco or Serena?
Sorry. Yeah, we are only considering that for the future, although this was not part of the original plan, and we are still looking for use cases. We don't think there is a lot of room for Office type of business apps running on Linux clients, but there are other scenarios like kiosk applications and devices that only have like a UI for tracking some physical devices or so on. So there are certainly scenarios where having a UI running on top of Linux would make sense, and we are interested in use case for a Linux UI.
So currently the Linux support's only available on Enterprise because Linux support is focused on server-side development. Are there plans maybe to make a Linux add-on pack or bring Linux to Pro if there's use cases that show Linux beyond server-side development? Marco?
It is something that could be considered, although we don't, the use cases we've heard so far were kind of ways to work around the limitation, so those won't really be valid. We do understand that there are scenarios in which would make sense to have like a purely standalone no database app running on Linux. We don't think these are extremely common, but we can certainly consider in the future to carve out a lighter version in terms of components and capabilities that still has the Linux compiler.
Okay. There's a question here about using ports 40 and, or I'm sorry, port 80 and port 4043 for on the same web server for IIS and Apache. Is that something that you can that's supported with Apache modules, being able to use both different ports? Marco?
Apache modules are just just use the Apache configuration. So whatever you can do with Apache, you can do with a module. A module doesn't have its own configuration in terms of port or anything like that. And actually, the flexibility you have on Apache configuration is actually quite high. I mean, I've been using Apache quite a bit for the last few years, and it's very nice what you can do in terms of configurations and management. So we just, a module just loads into the space of the main server and can do whatever the server requires. Now, there's also another technique, which is having standalone application with their own HTTP service that are visible from Apache through a proxy. So you can have an application running on any port and then map it to a folder into an Apache virtual or an entire virtual host on Apache just by means of proxy configuration, which is also extremely powerful. And proxies can also be used for simple load balancing and similar scenarios.
Okay, great. There's a question here about command line compiler. Does the command line compiler support Linux compiling? Marco?
Yes, it should.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I used that when I was doing the some of the early previews before I had the full install working.
Yeah, we have a command line compiler for Linux and fully support compiling with it. Also, all of our the command line compilers, the last cycle, we updated the IDE compilers to use large memory address, but we did not update the command line compilers. Now they're all 4 gigabyte memory space.
Oh, fantastic!
So when executed standalone.
Fantastic. Does now that we have the 10.2 out, when can we expect to see an updated roadmap and developer survey?
They are both coming within, actually, well, not days, because we only have, there's only 3 of us and we have plenty of stuff to do, but they're all going to happen fairly soon. They're not going to happen in order, so we do have a roadmap, also running a survey to get more information and more feedback about and update and fine-tune the roadmap to the request. So expect those within a few weeks at most.
Okay, it looks like David Millington might be back. David Millington, there was a question here about a C++ for beginners information. Is that something you want to speak about really quick?
Jim, I'll jump in there. Actually, I posted a link as a reply to David's GitHub repository where he has all the samples and also links to each of the lessons that he put together around learning C++ Builder.
Excellent. Thank you, Serena. Any special offers going on right now for RAD Studio? I guess we just listed those. If you want to know the special offers, though, you can go to embarcadero.com/rad offer. I'll put the link in there. Were you going to say something, Marco?
No, yeah, that this is the page, and we have an amnesty until the end of the month, which is only very few days left, plus some discount, some additional, some free RAD server when you're buying Enterprise or Architect, and also this larger bundle of RAD Studio with RAD Server and Interface Server.
Yeah, and actually, the end of the month for Amnesty, I know there was talk about getting rid of Amnesty altogether after this round because everybody's getting on update subscription, and so it's kind of the feeling as if you're not getting on Amnesty now. If you haven't upgraded now, you're probably not going to upgrade at all. So if you are on an older version and thinking, wow, Linux, wow, Android, wow, iOS, this is like everything I ever wanted, then upgrade now while you have the chance, because this could be the last best time to upgrade. So definitely definitely consider that here before the month runs out. There's a question here about Apple's tvOS and watchOS. Marco, do you want to? I know you've worked on that a little bit. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, those two operating systems require targeting bitcode, which is not a, well, despite the name, it's not a binary representation. It's more of an intermediate language representation for the LLVM infrastructure. So it's like IR for the .NET world, but that's for the LLVM ecosystem. So rather than deploying a compiled application, you deploy an intermediate representation, that's called bitcode, and then Apple does the compilation for you. Now, in theory, we could certainly target that, but it's a little tricky. And so we currently are researching what it would take to support bitcode, and also waiting on next move from Apple. In theory, for the Apple TV, you can technically run an ARM executable, so the same executable running on the iPhone. However, you cannot distribute those executables through the store. For store distribution, you need the bitcode model.
Yeah, thank you. It's kind of interesting because I guess they don't really document exactly what the bitcode looks like, so it's hard to target that officially.
Well, yeah, I mean, they say this is the tool to build it, which is Xcode, and they don't give much room for third parties. Although technically there is some specification, so we could try to. We could look for a solution. It's honestly there isn't a. Either both tvOS and iWatch have another platform that have taken the world by storm. They are certainly interesting platforms, but they remain fairly limited.
Yeah, okay. Good point. Does the in-memory version of FireDAC tables support SQL? So does the, I guess the FDMEM table support SQL?
This FDMEM table has an ability to actually use the SQLite SQL engine to actually query the tables in memory. So you can actually do joins and do complex operations against FDMEM table. That's what in FireDAC terms is called a local SQL, but it's a full SQL engine that lets you run queries in even joins or complex queries against one or more in-memory tables. So it's a fairly powerful, besides being very fast and having support for multiple formats, input and output, it also has the ability to do full query on the in-memory tables, which is absolutely a great feature of FireDAC.
Yeah, that's just phenomenal. FireDAC is so amazing. I love it.
Yeah, and you can. The good thing is you can have. You can have like a local table. You can have a response from a REST request. You can have another table that comes from, I don't know, Oracle, if they're not too big because you're processing in memory, and then you can join those tables and get a result, which is absolutely great.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a question here about any third-party components being offered with enterprise, like TMS components, for instance. Actually, I'll chime in here. We do have something in the works. Hopefully, it's not done yet, so I can't really commit on it. But if you buy now, you will still get it. So even if we're not able to get things lined up before the end of the month, signing up now, and you can get advantage of anything we add to the bonus pack here shortly. So. Can't say for sure, but it'll be cool. Parallel building, has that been improved any in Tokyo?
No, not really. It's exactly how it was working in the past.
Okay. Does Delphi support MTOM SOAP web services? Not even familiar with
No,
it.
that's something we don't support out of the box, and we're having more and more requests for it, which makes sense because it's interesting technology, but we don't have support right now.
Okay. So Peter's asking about deploying to Raspberry Pi, which is exciting, but I don't believe that's something we support right now out of the box.
Well, no, because Raspberry Pi hasn't got an Intel 64-bit CPU, has an ARM CPU, and we're not currently targeting ARM as a Linux platform. We are targeting ARM as Android, so in theory you can install Android on top of Raspberry Pi and distribute and build application with Delphi for it. And while some customers did it and are happy, we've also heard reports that Android it's kind of subpar performance on the Raspberry, and so if you want to be serious about Raspberry, you need an ARM compiler, which is something that in theory we could build. So it's another case where we'd be very interested to have specific cases, specific requirements, business requirements, because if people just wanted to have some fun, then it's probably not worth their investment and our investment beforehand. But if companies, as I expect, are building real solutions, professional solutions on Raspberry Pi, then they might be willing to spend money for the tooling like we can provide. So again, very interested in specific business use cases around Linux ARM in general and Raspberry Pi in particular.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting platform as well. I think we might see some more interest around that. There's a few questions here about some different third-party component vendors like DevExpress and Fast Reports and so on and so forth. I know a lot of them are working on updates for Linux and FireMonkey and such, but you really need to check with them to find out the details on that. So send them an email, let them know, post in their forums, whatever it is they use to find out what's important to their customers, and let them know that you do want to see them updating for Tokyo, you do want to see them updating for Linux and mobile platforms and everything. I know DevExpress has talked about that they're working on the FireMonkey release. I can't remember where they're at with that, as well as TMS is also working on some Linux releases as well. And I can't remember if Fast Reports is or not, but definitely do check with them. They're going to be the ultimate authority on that, even if I could remember what they had said or not. So the 10.2 Get It seems to be missing a few things like raised components. Are those going to show up later on, Marco?
Yeah, this is the plan, to make those available in a hopefully short amount of time after the release. We're kind of fine-tuning them, so rather than having a single installer, we'll install for these specific versions. So we're cleaning up the install experience a little and making them a little easier and smoother in terms of integration and installation, but that's going, unfortunately, to take a little more time. But they're expected to become available on Get It. And same for the IoT components that are missing. Those we are hoping to make available within a few days. We're just nailing down a couple of technical issues that were still there.
Okay. So the question about naming convention, about major releases versus minor releases. Why didn't we call it RAD Studio 11? Then we could say it goes to 11.
Well, because there was a decision a couple of years back to follow the two leading operating system vendors, well, desktop operating system vendor, we should say, because Android is a different scheme, that have decided that to stay for the foreseeable future on version 10, and those are Microsoft with Windows 10. We got Windows 10, we got Windows 10 Anniversary Edition, we got Windows 10 Creators Update that's coming in 3 months. And OS X, now renamed macOS, which has been in version 10 for I don't know how many years, but it's many years, like a dozen.
10 years or so.
Yeah, so we thought, okay, we're going to go call RAD Studio 10 for the foreseeable future. So the main version becomes 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and the second number is for minor version. So we saw, I mean, the last update for Berlin was 10.1.2. Now we released 10.2, and so the next minor update will be 10.2.1. When we have a major update, will be breaking interface requiring new third-party controls. We'll call it 10.3. Or we might change the naming convention. You never know.
Okay, can a 64-bit Windows application be converted into an installation package such as an MSI? Marco, if you want to answer that one.
We don't support building MSI, but there are third-party installer tools, including a couple that are available in Getit, that lets you build MSI. The only format of deployment that we support is creating an Apex package that's compatible with the Windows that actually uses the Windows Desktop Bridge technology and can be deployed directly on Windows 10 or through the Windows Store for Windows 10 desktop users.
Okay. Can the Linux compiler build shared objects.so files?
Absolutely, yes. In fact, those are needed for supporting Apache. Well, my short Apache demo, I built an SO for Apache, and you also need to build a shared object file for the EMS server, the RAD server technology. EMS modules are shared objects that are loaded either into Apache or the standalone RAD server. And of course, we also support, I mean, when you're building with those architectures, not Apache, but actually when you're building with RAD server, you also need to have a shared object for other, for like the RTL package or RTLDB or other packages that we provide. So we fully support shared objects in a way very similar to how we create packages on top of DLLs on Windows.
Okay. If someone's moving up from Delphi 7, besides Unicode, what sort of other things should they need to look at in moving from Delphi 7 Win32 to Delphi Tokyo 64 Win64 application?
Well, the changing in the string management and character management, that might be difficult or not depending on the original code. Of course, if there's lots of low-level processing, it might get a little tricky. The second is the fact this is 64-bit, so pointer size change compared to a 32-bit application. And the third is that this compiler is ARC-enabled, so that's the hurdle that everyone has, even if you are moving from Berlin Windows, because the Linux compiler uses reference content memory for all objects, which is the same model we're using on mobile.
Yeah, ARC's not usually that big of a headache, but there are situations it can change, although even without ARC there would be little corner cases.
Yeah, it is a bit of a headache when you're building libraries more than when you're using them and building the code. But there are certainly scenarios where you need to double check what you're doing in terms of memory management. I mean, in most cases it just works more easily and you don't have to worry about it.
Okay, so a couple of questions on mobile here, Serena. Is it possible to build Android widgets with FireMonkey on Android?
We don't have any built-in support for that at this point. I'm sure it may be possible to do that manually, but we don't have any pre-built or built-in support for that.
I think you'd have to build a front end for it in Java that could then call into your Delphi SO or something like that.
Yeah, I would recommend having doing a Google search. There might be some examples that other people have built.
And then, is it possible to use an Objective-C library, a .a, within iOS on iOS?
I think we have some examples for that. Jim, didn't you actually do that in a webinar, or Brian Long?
We did have some webinar. I can't remember if I did one or not, but I know we did have some skill sprints and some other webinars that showed how to manually import other APIs. Like, for example, Touch API, we showed how to do that, how to import arbitrary .a files. So, yeah, it's out there.
Yeah, I would recommend going to our YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com/Embarcadero TechNet and do a search there, you should be able to find the replays for those sessions.
Jim, I have something interesting there as well. I assume that question was to do with Delphi, not C++. But we actually have some support for Objective-C and C++ Builder as well. So as long as you're compiling on a platform that has an Objective-C runtime, such as Mac and iOS, then you can build and use Objective-C, .m files and so forth within C++ Builder. That's currently not documented, but is on the way to be fully examined and documented sometime soon. So
I'd heard about that.
Yeah, so whoever asked the question, like if you have C++ Builder or you have RAD Studio, combining the pair, then you can actually natively use Objective-C within it.
Cool. How about Swift? Everybody always asks us about that. I don't know why. Probably not. Okay.
We don't have support for editing Swift files, but the runtime is from closely related to the same. So if you exposed your Swift code with an Objective-C consumable interface, then that might be possible. We would have to look into that. No promises, but it's interesting.
I think Swift is interesting when compared to Objective-C, but Delphi and C++ Builder have a lot of the same, it seems, at least in my opinion, advantages Swift had over Objective-C. But anyway, is there any JSON to Delphi class converter provided with Delphi?
No, not really. We have some limited RTTI-based mapping, but nothing as nice as I wish we would have. So that's something that's still on the table.
I know there's a third-party app out there that does that.
No, there are third parties. There are a few libraries that do it, but nothing that comes with the product.
Yeah. That'd be awesome to add that to like the REST debugger or something. Maybe in the future. Okay. I think that's it for questions. I tried to answer most of them. I just went through and skimmed through to make sure I didn't miss anything. So there were some repeats, and sometimes I miss things in the repeats, but hopefully I did not. If you do have a burning question that somehow was missed, please put it in the question panel again. We'll try and get to it real quick while I give everybody a moment for some final words. Nick, do you have any final words you want to share before we sign off today?
I want to say thank you to everybody for attending, and please give Tokyo a look.
Fantastic. Marco, how about you?
The only thing I wanted to add is that we're actually very happy to be able to finally provide the Linux Delphi compiler that's been long awaited. And I really think the quality is great, and I'm looking forward, as I was mentioning earlier, to actually get back to host my websites and all of my stuff on Linux machines compared to Windows where they are now. I really preferred using Linux as a server hosting platform. So I'm going to shop for a physical web server probably within a few days.
Very cool. That's exciting. David, if you're there, any last words? And someone's asking for that link for C++ beginner stuff again as well.
Sure. I'm here, and apologies for the connection problems I've had during the Q&A. So we'll post a link into the chat log, but you can actually find that blog series if you go to blogs.embarcadero.com, and then in the menu there's a blog menu, and you can see a list of people who blog. If you click my name, David Millington, and I think on the second page is where you see that series. There are 5 posts all about. getting started learning C++ with C++ Builder, it assumes you know how to program already. If you're familiar with Delphi, then it's perfect. You can read that series and start picking up C++. Final words. Thanks very much for everyone for attending. The Q&A has been fantastic to answer. There's lots of enthusiastic questions and happy feedback, and that's always a great thing to see. And I'd like to encourage you as well to feel free to email any of us on the PM team. We do like getting feedback from you and hearing from you.
Yeah, I know it's always, whenever I talk to a customer that's doing something interesting or whatever, it's always, product manager always loves hearing about that. So yeah, please do let them know interesting things you're working on and stuff you encounter. And Serena, real quick, anything you'd like to add?
Well, thank you very much for attending. As Marco and David said and Nick said, we're really excited about this release. And if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to contact us. Send us an email. We always love to hear from customers and send questions our way. And try out, download the RAD Studio 10.2 trial. And if you're an update subscription, you should be able to just download and install 10.2 using your existing license.
Fantastic. It looks like Stephen Ball is offline right now. It's late night for him over in Europe. So, all right, that's it for us right now. Thanks everybody for joining us. Do download the trial if you haven't already, and get update subscription, and get going with this. Like I said, this is probably the best time to buy if you are not yet on update subscription, and you can take advantage of these best offers. Oh, and then actually, real quick, here's a question. What is the best one-liner to tell my boss to let me jump on Tokyo and Linux? If you have one, I'll let you chime in, but I'll go ahead and add one, is that Linux hosting is so much cheaper than Windows hosting, especially if you're self-hosting it, that part right there will pay for itself. If you're doing any web hosting right now, to being able to move from a Windows host to a Linux host could save you quite a bit of money. And probably pay for your upgrade right there. Get on this subscription. Save money in the long run. Anything else? Anybody else wants to add on that?
Nothing else to add, but I 100% agree. That was the same point that I was going to make.
Yeah. And Linux is cool. Then you can get a shirt with a penguin embroidered on it and tell everybody that you're work on Linux. Actually, I will show a quick story real quick as we sign off here. I was contacted by a guy that does Linux system administrator training. He'll come into a company and do a week-long training for everybody there on how to be a Linux system administrator. And he's always getting questions about development on Linux because of the whole DevOps movement, and so the operators are now wanting to do development too. And he's never had anything he was really happy with to teach people. He's taught them, Java and Python, but it's always been it's not great, but it's better than nothing. But he met someone that introduced him to Linux, to Delphi, and told him, well, they've got Linux support coming out, and he is thrilled and is actually building a whole course around teaching Linux administrators how to use Delphi to develop all their stuff for Linux that they need to do in the DevOps space. So it's pretty exciting just to see we always are getting new people coming on board with all the new releases we have and all the great new stuff going on in this space, and it's just always exciting to see other people discovering this for the first time and saying, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I don't know how I lived without it before. So, it's almost like being able to dip your pizza crust in garlic butter sauce. So with that, I will let everyone go. Thanks so much for joining us, and yeah, looks like we got all the questions answered. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stephen, and the rest of the product management team for putting that together. A lot of great information in there. Tokyo is a fantastic release with lots of great things in it, and it's fantastic to see so much small fixes going in there along with the big support for the new Linux platform. Joining me right now for Q&A is Nick Hodges. Are you there, Nick?
I am here. Hello.
Hello. Some of the other product management team might be in a little bit just because of people, a lot of them are in Europe. Marco and David are in Europe, and Stephen Ball. So the question here about Starter Edition, does it allow for using third-party controls, so installing other packages and components and stuff like that?
It does indeed.
It does, yeah. The limitations for Starter is that it's Win32 only. There's a few features it's missing, no database support, and the licensing limit as far as for commercial development. Is that pretty accurate?
Then there's some IDE things that are not there, some IDE enhancements that are not there that are good to have if you want to upgrade.
Okay, yeah. But you can certainly install your own components and make your own components with it as well.
Indeed. Indeed you can.
The commercial licensing restriction is such that as soon as you are making over a certain limit, then you just have to upgrade to Pro, and probably when you're about that limit is about when you can afford to upgrade to Pro. So it's definitely a bootstrap, if you will. You could just go get it, start using it until you're ready to upgrade. Let's see. I have a subscription and want to upgrade, but I can't find where to log in to download the update. So those are on the registered user download page. If you go to
the registered user download page, and subscription customers should have gotten an email describing all of that to them. If not, I'd contact support and find out. I confess I do not know the answer to that question about a subscription upgrade, but you certainly are entitled to it if you're on subscription, and we certainly want you to have it. So contact support, they can help you, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, good point. You could ask sales, and maybe they will direct you, and if they can't help you, then certainly talk to support, and they'll get you pointed in the right direction. I have the Kanopka Signature VCL controls as a bonus with last year's upgrade, and I read that they'll be included free in Godzilla, but in the meantime, when will an update for 10.2 be released?
They should be out this week. We just took delivery of them, and they should be up on Get It here very soon.
Okay, great. So yeah, you just be able to get the Kanopka VCL controls on Get It very, very soon. That's great.
Don't forget the Radiant controls. Those are really slick too.
Yeah, the Radiant shapes. I love those. Those are
Radiant shapes. Yep.
Definitely. Those two sets of control right there really escalate your development. That's for sure. What is the time limit on the early bird offer again? I would like to be renewing my subscription for Delphi Enterprise.
I think end of the month is what they said.
Yeah, the best deals are going to be to the end of the month. There may be some new ones, some different ones next month, but the best deals are right now. So
the best time to buy is now.
That's right. It is the end of the fiscal year for us, and so they really want to close all these offers out and set the sales at the end of the month. So they're pretty serious about trying to get these sales right now. So
and I think they also mean it about amnesty this time.
Yeah, they're really talking about it putting in an amnesty. So if you're on earlier versions, now's the time to do it because you might not get a better chance than right now. Plus, hello, you're getting Linux as well as Android and iOS, Windows 64, Windows 10 Store, Mac OS 10. It's like everything. Okay. Do you have Apple Touch Bar support in Delphi for Apple Mac OS Sierra development?
I don't believe so, I'm afraid to say.
There's not Touch Bar specific support, but you can very easily pull in those libraries and those APIs and access those. So even though they're not exposed yet, a third party may have a library for that. If not, maybe in your future, maybe that third party will be you, or you can just pull those libraries and access them directly. So yeah, I don't. Those are not in there yet. And I know that we are looking to have updated roadmap and everything coming in the near future as well.
That's true. I'm not on the PM team anymore, so I'm not exactly sure what their deadline is, but it's soon, I believe, to have a new roadmap.
Yeah.
Things have changed a little bit. You know, we've had to flex a little bit with the C++ coming out a little later than the Delphi. So we need to change the roadmap, and I believe that's coming soon, like next week, maybe.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't want to
Great.
put a date on it.
Yeah, I know that Marco was saying it would be very soon that we would see an updated roadmap and a developer survey. Hey, and there's Serena DuPont. We got our wires crossed for times there. So. Hey, Serena, can you hear us? So, Serena, there was a question about the updated roadmap. Do you want to comment about when that might be expected?
I don't have a specific date yet on when the new roadmap can be expected, or the updated roadmap, but that's something that is in the works.
Okay.
Once we have it, we'll be posting it to community.embarcadero.com.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of improvements and such to community.embarcadero.com. So if you haven't been out there in a while, come check it out. We're always adding new content and new features and trying to improve it. So check it out. Let us know if there's anything else you are needing or that's not working right for you, and we'll do our best to get it fixed.
Indeed.
All right. Well, it looks like that's the end of the questions. Unless somebody else has any other questions you want to add in really quick. Now is the best time to buy. We may be having some additional things in the bonus pack coming out as well, but if you buy now, you'll get those bonus pack items later when they become available. So there's no need to wait. Especially with update subscription, you buy now, you're going to get all the updates, the new features, the new versions, the C++ Linux support when it comes out and such. So
And if
anything you want to add?
Yeah, sorry, if you are an update subscription, then your existing license should work just fine with 10.2, and you can just go and download 10.2. It's a registered user download at pc.embarcadero.com.
That was a question we had earlier. Thank you. Yes. Nick, anything you want to add? And by the way, do you want to mention what your new title is, I guess, since you said you're not in product management anymore?
I'm the Director of Engineering, so I'm in charge of building the product.
Which I think is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's a pretty good deal. I'm excited too.
It's always nice to know that the person who's in charge, well, I guess on both sides. I mean, I know Marco and Serena and David and all product management is very, very passionate and very excited about these products. And then I know you're also very excited and very passionate about it. You're writing books about it and you're very involved in the community. And so I think that really translates into better product being released. So I'm very, very excited about that. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and hopefully you're enjoying Tokyo and as excited about Linux support as we all are, and we look forward to seeing some of the great things you're doing. If you do need to follow up with any product management, their email addresses up on the screen right now. Nick Hodges is also nick.hodges@embarcadero.com, and I'm jim.mckeith@embarcadero.com, and we'd love to hear from you. Okay, well, thanks so much, and we will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.